All right, check 1 2, check 1 2. That sounds nice. I like it. Check 1 2. All right. I think it is time to get rolling here, which is great. All right, so good afternoon, my friends, and all my fellow veterans who may be joining me today. My name is Trevor Meyer, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Warrior Beat and a former Navy corpsman. So really excited about this new program we're starting. So this is going to be the Home Recording Masterclass, and it's for really a program I've designed for people who have either never recorded themselves before or maybe have started to dabble in home recording and just want to get kind of the basics and then into some in-depth concepts of getting the best out of your home recording setup. So I have definitely developed this program for those who aren't looking to even invest a ton of money in equipment. I think that's very important that so many of these software programs offer us such advanced options that we can now, just using our phone or our tablet on a very simple setup at home, get these what I would call radio ready or professional level recordings. So I'll give you a little bit about my background as we get started here. So like I said, I was a Navy corpsman, and after I left the Navy, I actually was in religious order, the Jesuits, for a while, and that just wasn't my calling either. So I ended up moving to New York City, where I lived for a better part of a decade. And while in New York City, I moved there to pursue drumming professionally. And basically, my foray into recording came about as a frustrated drummer. Too often I would go into a recording session and the drum set was mutilated, the miking was improper, and I just was not happy with the recordings that I was getting of my drumming. I figured it's like I spent all these years refining my technique and I wanted that captured properly. So that really started my interest and love affair with recording. And while I lived in New York, I got to intern in some of the best studios that city had to offer and work under some just top-notch mixing engineers and record producers as well. And I was also involved on the retail side. I managed the Guitar Center Pro Audio department in Manhattan for a couple of years. And that experience was great because it was one of their flagship stores. So all of these different gear companies would come in with their latest product and their state-of-the-art stuff, and I would get to see it first. I get to train on it, and so my knowledge as a producer and an audio engineer just grew exponentially in my time in New York City. And so I'm really excited to be able to share what I've learned with you so you can start getting your own recordings sounding the way you want them to. And again, I'm designing this program based on zero to very limited knowledge. And over the course of the next, I don't know how long this is going to go. Again, this is something I enjoy doing. So we're going to be doing this every Saturday from noon until probably around 2 o'clock. It's an open forum, so please ask questions during this. Maybe you're working on some mixes at home and you want to get another pair of ears on them, or you have some questions about compression, EQ, miking techniques. That's what I'm here for. I love doing that. I also have a lot of experience as a live sound engineer, worked in a lot of clubs in New York, had the pleasure of being one of the sound engineers at the gathering of the Juggalos a few years back, which was actually it was a great experience, a lot of fun. Getting to mix some of those bands, but it was quite a circus. And but just seeing what goes into a large production like that. And again, this is designed for home recording. I mean, granted, we can invest millions of dollars on these huge consoles you see, and there's a romantic side to that, but a lot of that expensive, what we would call outboard gear being these physical pieces that go into a recording studio, just aren't really, used as much anymore. So many of our favorite artists are able to do all of their recording and production from home, just using a laptop and a MIDI controller and one microphone and a little preamp. And maybe you're asking yourself, hey, what's a microphone? What's a MIDI controller? What's a preamp? I hope you have those kind of questions, because we're going to get into all of those details. And also, I'm going to be recommending certain products, and none of this is endorsed. I have no sponsors, so nobody is paying me to endorse a product. When I recommend a product, it's because I use it, and I found it to be very cost effective. I'm not one of those people that had hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in a home recording setup. And so, again, I'm designing this program with the budget, friendly musician in mind. And also, as a drummer and a multi-instrumentalist, my background in recording, I come at it as a player, as a musician. So this course is definitely designed to get the players involved. And also for those who are aspiring to be producers, whether it be making beats, recording voiceovers. I'm going to give you tips and techniques to do all that. So again, the gear that I'm going to be recommending is just because I use it and I love it and I trust it, and it fit into my budget, which is always that big. So definitely, I'm excited to share that. And also these techniques, and I use a program called Studio One. highly recommended. We're going to be getting into the nuts and bolts of Studio One today and throughout this series, but all of the techniques I'm going to teach you will translate to Logic, to Pro Tools, and probably one of the most used programs now, especially for the home recording enthusiast, is GarageBand. And GarageBand is an incredible program that comes on our Apple products, the phones and the tablets, and I'm pretty sure nowadays it's just included free. And it's a tremendous program. You can get radio-ready recordings on your phone, on your tablet, using GarageBand, and I'm going to be getting into, techniques on how to do that. And again, I'm going to be teaching you, very basic stuff. I'm teaching this course for that person that might not even know what a microphone cable is and how to plug in a mic. And I think that's great. I'm hoping you're coming to me just with that foundation. So definitely, there is no such thing as a stupid question. I don't care how basic it is. I once was that home recording enthusiast sitting there going, okay, which cable do I use? What's the difference between a TRS and just a regular instrument cable, or a microphone cable and a MIDI cable? I had no idea. And, another thing that I found that's helped me most in my career as I progressed as a more professional level producer is just getting the products and using them at home. So much of what I learned was by trial and error in my own home studio, like when I lived in New York City. It's like before I knew what I was doing, I bought the basic recording software. I had a cheap tower computer I found in the closet, wasn't even sure if it would work, one microphone and an interface. And I just sat there for year after year just teaching myself the ins and outs of recording by experimentation. And I really think that is the most cost-effective and fastest way to learn record production. There are plenty of schools that offer degrees in recording, and those are great too. But I don't think there's any reason to take on $100,000 debt in college to learn stuff that you can teach yourself over the matter of a few weeks. And it is a very competitive market getting into the recording business, and so the less debt you have, and the better when you're getting it. And no record producer I ever worked for, or studio that I worked for in New York City, is like, where did you go to school for this? They're just like, send me a few of your mixes, let me hear what you can do, and then get in here and let's see if you're, some of the foundation levels is just professionalism, showing up on time, knowing your stuff, being polite, being easy to work with. Those open doors, because I look at as a producer, I'm there to serve the artist. I'm there to make it the most comfortable experience possible for them. So it's supposed to be a joyful experience, and so attitude and professionalism are huge in that. We can pick up those skill sets, any skill set you need for a recording session as you go along, but that attitude and people wanting to work with you, and that comes from just being professional. That professionalism goes a long way. So, well, let's get right down to it. When we talk about the home recording studio, some of the basic things that I think that as you're building your own home recording studio that are very important and are going to set you up for success, to get the best mixes possible. And today I'm going to cover just the basics of setting up your room. I'm going to talk about the different types of microphones. I'm going to talk about what is an audio interface, and especially, how do you get the right computer, and then also using phones and tablets as well. And so I'll just give you a quick little tour of my space here. And again, it's a relatively simple setup. Again, it's a little more advanced. I think you don't have to have all the stuff I have, but I find every piece of gear I have I purchased because it's become essential to my workflow. Not just being able to work faster, but it's fun. And that's what, to me, recording is all about. It's about having fun. And I didn't, my home studio is not where I intend to work with other artists. Like, I'm not bringing a band into my home studio. This is where I record my own music. This is where I create and record all the backing tracks that we use with Warrior Beat, the drum-alongs, the voiceovers for all of our video. And I'm able to do that right here from home. And I'm excited to even talk about some of this modern software that we have that allows you to get pro-level drum tracks, pro-level bass tracks, pro-level keyboard tracks without knowing how to play a lick, Hey, Bella, you want to say hi to everybody? I don't know if they can see you. It's my little recording buddy. Come here. Come here, say hi, you cute thing. So this is Bella. She likes to sit and mix with me. She can chew a cable in half in about 2 minutes. Isn't that right, sweetheart? Yes, you can. You're a good girl. Go chew on something that's not expensive, please. So let's get right down to it. You know, the basics of home. I got my notes here. Got some different camera angles set up so you'll be able to see over top a little bit about what I have going on my mixing desk here. And let's just get right down to it. Let's look at my notes here. Where's a good place to start? So the first thing you might be asking yourself, and I think this is when you're building a home studio, you don't need a ton of space. I don't have but probably 3, if that, 200 square feet here, maybe. It's like kind of what you see is the size of the room. And I think let's first talk about acoustic treatment and treating your room. And you might have heard people talk about that before, like, you got to treat your room, and is your room set up for recording? And that is definitely a very important part of setting up a home studio. And you can do that on a very low budget as well. And so some of the basics, when, like, I have my setup here, so when I'm in the mix position like this, you see my speakers are coming here, so they're going to come in right to the right angle. It forms a triangle to the back of your head. And there's a thing called room reflection. And when you're setting up your room, what you're trying to do is really eliminate room reflection. Because what that's going to do, a sound wave, whether it be a tiny high frequency wave or a big bass wave, which can be up to like 4 feet in length, even though we can't see them, a bass wave is massive. And when they bounce off hard surfaces, they start to go all over the room, and the room becomes real heavy with all these frequencies. So it gets very difficult to accurately hear what your recording sounds like. So if you're mixing in an untreated room, and you might be having that problem where it's just like, my mixes don't sound the way that they do in my headphones. And we'll get to headphones here shortly, because headphones are a huge part of the equation as well. And what's cutting out? That's my mic. So treating a room, there's several key places I think it's very important to have acoustic treatment, and that's going to be behind your speakers. And these are what we call monitor speakers, and they come in a variety of sizes. I have little 5-inch monitors here at my keyboard station, and then I have larger 8-inch monitors here at the mix position. And I use the Yamaha series monitors. They're awesome. These are the HS8s. Very cost effective. They're like less than $300 a piece, but at the price range, they are so full and so accurate sounding. They don't hype frequencies, as they would say. It's a very flat frequency response. And when we're selecting our home studio monitors, we got to keep in mind it's not the same process as selecting speakers, say, for your car or for your home stereo, your home theater system, because those speakers are designed to really enhance certain frequencies. What we're doing in a home studio setup is we want speakers that have a very flat response, so you can accurately hear what your different tracks sound like when you're mixing. And so maybe you have a decent pair of speakers and you're like, I'm still not getting that level of accuracy I want. And that's going to come down to room treatment. So a few easy ways when you're setting up your little home studio room is you want to first of all, make sure that your monitor speakers are at least a foot, if not 2 feet, off the wall. That's very important. If you have those things wedged up against the wall and you got a few inches there with the bass frequencies and all that, they're coming off the back, hitting that wall, and they're coming out. So you're not going to get an accurate idea of the true representation of those frequencies. So making sure they're at least, the rule of thumb is usually at least 1 foot from any hard surface like your wall. And now, what I've done too, and I would say the second step, is putting a very soft surface behind the mix position. So I have this foam up there. You can see that fancy foam. And then just some regular acoustic blankets, even like moving blankets that you get at Lowe's or Home Depot that are like $20 a piece. Go a great deal. And you can just kind of figure out a way to mount those behind your mix position. And that's going to kill any reflection coming off your back wall, which is very important. Second area that's also very important to treat is going to be the wall behind your head. So if I'm sitting here in my mix position like this, I got the treatment back there, so there's nothing reflecting off my back wall. And then behind me, directly behind me, is also where I have a lot of acoustic treatment. And what I've done is, you see these foam panels. I went to online. There's a website called the Foam Factory, and towards the end of the session, I'll even pull that website up to show you exactly what I purchased, because the Foam Factory, you get a piece of foam that size, that's a big piece there for like $40. You buy a piece like that at Guitar Center or something, they're charging you like $300. The markup is stupid on the foam when you buy it retail, because they know how important it is. And so I have my entire room I have covered with foam, and I also have a carpeted floor. So I basically have zero room reflections happening. So it's a very accurate room, and I didn't spend but probably $200 on the foam and just stapled it up. And so yeah, making sure, another budget-friendly way to set up rear position acoustic treatment is even just taking getting a cheap comforter or something like that. I saw comforters at Mark's the other day for $5, and then just hanging those up on the wall behind your mix position is also going to start to deaden those frequencies. So we don't want frequencies bouncing off the back wall and then coming back into our mix position. So we treat behind the speakers, 1 foot off the wall for their placement, and then we treat behind our heads. Again, soft surface, it's going to absorb. It's called acoustic absorption, and there's a couple different ways to treat them. And to me, the easiest, most cost-effective way is acoustic absorbing panels, which is like foam, blankets, things like that. They also have, what do they call it? Decoupling surfaces, and instead of you can buy devices that channel the sound away from where you're sitting, basically reflections. That stuff gets a little bit more pricey, and that's when you see panels that have pieces of wood with all these crazy angles. And essentially what that's doing is it's dispersion. That's acoustic dispersion. It's dispersing those sound waves so they're not going boom back and forth, because the sound wave just hits the wall, comes straight back, and just boom boom, and it keeps going until it loses enough energy to be absorbed by a surface. So if you got drywall, or maybe you got a nice basement setup going on and there's brick down there, well, those acoustic waves, they're just bounce, 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 and every wave that comes out of those speakers bounce, bounce, bounce. So you can imagine after like 10 seconds of playing a song, that room is just full of reflection. So we want to either deflect those away from our position, or we want to absorb them. Absorption is always usually the cheapest way to go, and that's just putting up foam. And the thicker the foam, the better. I purchased 3-inch foam panels. That's going to do a pretty good job about getting all the frequencies. Again, bass waves. If you're using a subwoofer, which I don't, I like the 8-inch speakers I have do a very good job of fully representing the EQ spectrum for me. And we'll talk more about monitors and using a subwoofer as we get into deeper into the course. But bass waves, like I said, can be up to 4 feet, 6 feet in their length, and so it's only going to absorb the amount of depth, if that makes sense. So if you got a 4-foot wave, then you'd need a 4-foot piece of foam to absorb it. It's like then it gets a little bit pricey. But I found the 3-inch foam panels work perfectly. And third important position, right above your mix position. Again, I just put a little panel up there, and I have a drop ceiling with softer panels, which is nice. So then the sound actually goes through that, hits the reflective surface up, and that's the thing, is when it goes through a sound panel, it's got to come back through it. So you get extra absorption. So suddenly a 3-inch thickness becomes 6 inches, because the sound wave travels through the foam, hits the back wall, and has to come back through the foam. So yeah, so again, easiest way to start improving your mixes is make sure you just some minor sound treatment. Corners, you'll hear what they're called bass traps, which are much thicker. Like I said, we're starting to get about 3 feet, and these corner wedge traps. And you treat your corners because bass loves to build up in the corners, So we're talking about the corners in the back area. I don't have really many corners in this room, the way I have it divided out. So I didn't have to worry too much about bass frequencies. Another great way to absorb bass frequencies is if just putting the couch behind you. Now, if you got your cool little mix setup going, throw your couch from when you have your friends come over to listen to all your awesome mixes, put that right behind your mix position. That soft couch is going to absorb so much bass. I mean, all those frequencies. So, hanging up some foam and then putting a couch back there is perfect. And also, it's a great listening position for your artists or your clients to come in and take a listen to your mixes. So that's yeah. So that really, and I know if you're logged in. Hey, Army veteran here. All right, glad to be a part of your program. Well, thank you. Welcome. Yes. So if you have any questions, please just throw it out there too. Like I said, I have a general outline of what I'm keeping to, but again, it's like I'm here to help you enhance your own recording experience. So I'll make sure I keep checking the chat board here. That's really exciting. Awesome. Well, welcome. And okay, so that was step one, room treatment. If maybe you set it up in a side office or your bedroom, or maybe you're in a lot of times I've set up my home studios in the basement. Throwing down a rug. That's the other area where you're going to get that sound reflection. So just the rug doesn't have to cover the entire area, generally just around your mix position. Because sometimes if you're tracking drums or maybe acoustic guitars, you're going to want a hard floor to do that on, so you get some more natural reflection of the instrument. And that's kind of the difference between a tracking room and your mixing room. The mixing room, we just want absolutely dead. We want things, sound waves dispersed or absorbed. Whereas in your tracking room, if you have too much foam up, you get what they would call like a dead sound, because there's no sense of room. It's like that you hit a drum and it's all absorbed, and they're not getting any sense of space. So you lose that spatial sense if you put too much in your tracking room. So acoustic treatments. That's step one. And I'm kind of going through this as you're sitting there, like I'm building out my home studio. How do I do it? And before you get all the fancy stuff set up in your desk and all your instruments, that's the easiest time to hang up any acoustic treatment. Because trust me, I've tried to do it when I brought all the nice stuff in, and it's kind of becomes a pain in the butt there. Hey, what's up, Bella? You're a good girl. All right, so moving along, let's talk about the different components that are going to go into a home recording setup. And there's a million different components that you can get, and there's a million different manufacturers. So again, I'm going to just recommend the products I use, but you just really can't go wrong, with microphones and interfaces, because at this point, so many of these companies are putting out quality products. I just like to recommend the stuff I use, and I buy all my equipment through sweetwater.com. Their pricing is the best. Everything comes with a built-in 2 or 3 year warranty that's not even related to the manufacturer, which is amazing. And I also get the best customer service and the fastest shipping through Sweetwater. I've invested a large portion of all the money that I've brought in with Sweetwater, and happily so. I've always been treated so well. If something isn't working right or it breaks, they have customer service on it like that. They can remote access your system to help you optimize your software. Sweetwater.com, you can't go wrong there. And so what are the different components of a good home studio setup? And again, I'm going to be getting to tablets and phones as recording devices, because those are very viable tools for recording music on. But I'm going to start with kind of the way my approach, which would be using either a high-powered laptop, or I have my tower here that I had custom built just for recording and video editing. And so, what are the different things you want to look for with your home, your computer or your laptop? And there's two different components to a computer that are going to make the most difference. And that's going to be your processing speed, which is how fast your computer can process data, and then RAM. RAM is incredibly important, and a lot of these software programs require a certain amount of RAM to even run properly. Usually they'll say 8 gigabytes of RAM is like the minimum you should have. I would even say 16 gigabytes of RAM is probably the minimum you should have, because when you get the minimum amount of RAM, it's basically saying our program's going to run, but it's gonna take your computer a lot of work to run it, and especially when you start using virtual instruments, which we're gonna get into, and some of these plugins that are really high on your computer processing and RAM. We call them RAM hogs. That the more RAM you have, the better. It's like my system. I have 128 gigabytes of RAM, and I just when I was building this setup, I really went for it. And I have these Ryzen Threadripper processors that can handle up to. They're running 48 cores at the same time, and this was like a $7,000 investment for me. But I do a lot of professional and video and audio editing. And with that much processing power, I'm able to pull up a DaVinci Resolve video editing session and pull up my recording software and work on things simultaneously. And my computer's it's barely registering that it's working, which is awesome. But I've also I've had all kinds of successful recordings I've done on a laptop that had 16 gigabytes of RAM with quad core processing. And so that's when they talk about cores. Quad core means you have 4 processors that can run simultaneously. This is a 48 core, so I have 48 processors that can run simultaneously. And when they say processing speed, you see like the numbers, like it has 2.5 gigahertz processing. And you want to get something that's going to be like 2.8. You get something that has like 3.5. Now you're really talking. That's smoking. That's a smoking fast unit. This one's up in the 4 point something gigahertz processing. And so you want to look at, again, your processing speed and the amount of RAM you have. You can get away with 8 gigabytes of RAM, but maybe you have a laptop that has 8 gigabytes of RAM. Well, you can always buy an additional 8 gigabyte card to have 16. Most laptops or computers, the great thing about them is that they're expandable. So that's always something I recommend. And you can get RAM chips now pretty dirt cheap. Back in the 90s and early 2000s when I was learning recording, well, RAM and memory was so expensive. And when I say memory too, that's the third component of home recording that you got to look at when you're looking at your laptop or your computer is storage. So I have separate drives built in mine. One drive holds just samples, and one drive is where I do all my recording on. And then one drive is just my operating systems, the C drive. And so you want to make sure you have a couple of different drives, and like your samples, the drive you record on to should not be the same drive you have your operating system on, which is commonly your C drive. So you have like your D drive is where all your recording software lives, and then I have like a sample drive where I put all my software instruments, and then a video drive for all my video projects. And that's just going to make sure, because the C drive is where all your processing power comes from, and if you start having all your stuff living on your C drive, which I'm terribly guilty of at times in the past, your computer is going to start to bog down, and you'll have a lot of glitches in your recording setup. So yeah, it's just making sure and external drives are great. Like I have all kinds of little external drives. You can get tiny drives now that have like 128. You can get terabytes now. What am I talking about? Gigabytes, terabytes. You can get a 2 terabyte external drive for like $40, which is amazing. So you want to make sure you give yourself ample drive space for storage. So that's very important as well. And again, you can go with laptop or just a full tower desktop. I've had great success with both. I'm a PC guy, and really the reason I chose PC is because it's a very stable platform, but it's also very cost effective. To get, like I said, I have this the Ryzen here, custom build, and granted I paid $7,000, but to get that same specs that I have on this in a Mac product would have been close to $25,000. And it's just like, what? That's crazy. I love Macs, and I mean Mac is, what's great about Mac is they're built like tanks, and they rarely, if ever, are you going to have a crash on a Mac. PC can be a little bit more finicky, and but once you learn the ins and outs of PC, I've never had a computer crash on PC. But I can afford to get the specs that I need for my recordings if I stick with PC as opposed to a Mac product. But that's, like I said, that's user's choice. I love them both. I've mixed on both systems, and you can't go wrong with either. I just stick with PC because it's affordable and just easy to upgrade, and it's so that's step one, having the right computer. And again, if you're working on your tablet or your iPhone using like GarageBand, or GarageBand's what you're going to be using on tablets and iPhones and iPads and that. And again, if that's your sole intention of using that as your recording system, then getting that iPad or iPhone that has larger memory capacities. You can't, and the fastest processing speed you have. I have a friend in Las Vegas who's recorded full, amazing sounding albums on his iPad. He got the iPad Pro with maxed out memory and never had an issue with storage or anything. He loves it. He doesn't even use a microphone. He uses a built-in mic, which is crazy. Just sets it in front of his guitar and starts going at it. And his recordings sound magnificent, And we're going to talk about microphone technique as we move through this series as well, because where you put your mic, that's what it's all about. A lot of people, you'll hear them say, "Oh, you're just going to fix it in the mix, or you just fix it in Pro Tools." Kind of became almost a running joke in the recording industry. Once software-based recording came in, is because you can in software, it's so easy to fix mistakes. I think musicians and producers got lazy, and they decided instead of getting it right during the recording process, they figured they'd just fix it in the mix. Well, you know what? Can you fix a lot of things in the mix? Absolutely, but I find you get the best results when the recording going into the system sounds great. And I'm going to teach you how to do that, from miking guitars, electric guitar amps, to miking acoustic guitars, to just getting world-class sounding vocals as well. And then of course we're going to talk about miking drums and drum sets in future sessions. Today is just about getting those brass bones. I'm just getting started kind of series. So that we talked about the computer, the laptop. Second major component is going to be your audio interface. And you might be asking, well, what's an audio interface? So I have this here is an 8-channel audio interface. Again, I use PreSonus products, not because I'm paid to. It's because I love them. Their level of quality is out of this world, and their cost is so much less than companies that make products that perform at these levels. So I picked the Quantum 2626. And it is a Thunderbolt interface. And Thunderbolt is pretty much primarily a Mac product. So I actually had to have a special card put in my PC to run the Thunderbolt connection. But Thunderbolt, there's different types of connections you'll hear about. USB, Thunderbolt, and FireWire is also still used. And then for tablets and phones, it's going to be a Lightning connection. So when you're purchasing your interface, you want to make sure that you actually have the proper input to run your interface. And some of the advantages or the differences, we could say, it doesn't matter if it's USB, Thunderbolt, FireWire, or Lightning, you can get awesome level recordings. USB, we're talking kind of about recording bandwidth, how much information can physically pass through the cable. Right now, Thunderbolt is the fastest, one of the fastest, if not the fastest on the market. I don't know the exact data specs, but it's X amount times faster than FireWire and X amount times faster than USB. USB, though, has gotten, the quality of USB equipment has gotten so good, you can still, you're not going to really notice a difference. It's, if you're running massive track input counts, like trying to record 36 channels at once, well, then you're probably want to invest in a Thunderbolt system. But USB can work just as well. So getting yourself a high quality interface. And what the interface does is it converts, it's called AD and DA conversion. And AD conversion means analog, which is a external sound like playing the guitar, singing, real audio as an analog signal. And then there's a digital signal, and that's what happens inside of your computer. So analog to digital basically converts an analog audio analog signal into binary code, digital. And so the faster that your system is able to do that, the higher quality of your audio signal is going to be once you get it inside the computer. And so yeah, getting you can get audio interfaces that range anywhere from just single channel, meaning you can plug one microphone or one instrument into it, to, normally they're going to come up to 8, and then you can just start stacking them if you need more inputs. I selected one with 8, one because the PreSonus products are they're so cost effective. It's like I could afford an 8-channel mixer. I think this was $500, which is uh, for the level of recording quality it gets is just insane. You have to spend $2,000 with other companies to get the quality AD conversion. And then you hear DA conversion. That's going to be this device also converts digital audio binary code into an analog signal that we can then hear through our speakers. So most modern interfaces do both. They do the analog to digital conversion, and they do the digital to analog conversion as well. You can buy systems that, separate devices that just focus on doing both. But again, I like to think I keep things simple and cost effective. We are home recording studios. We're not out in Ocean Way in California or at the Sony studios in New York City. We're in our dens, our bedrooms, and our basement. My studio is literally in my basement bedroom, and that's where I like it, and it works for me. So getting yourself a good interface. And again, it's just making sure that your computer or your laptop has the right plug-in. So if you get a USB interface, make sure that you have a USB input on your computer. Every computer is going to come with a USB input. If you choose to go Thunderbolt, then you're going to make sure that probably at that point you're using a MacBook or a Mac Tower or a Mac Mini. Those are going to have the Thunderbolt inputs for you. So that's our interface, and that's what we're going to plug our microphones into. That's what we're going to plug our guitars into. A lot of these are going to come with MIDI inputs as well. MIDI stands for a musical instrument digital interface. And basically MIDI, all of these are MIDI controllers. This is a MIDI controller. My mixer here is a MIDI controller, and my keyboards. These keyboards don't make real sounds on their own. They just can control computer software via MIDI. And so you hit this and it makes a signal in the computer via MIDI, and then the software program turns that into a real sound. And I'm going to get into some of these software programs here shortly just to give you an example. Well, I may as well do that now. I'm talking about it. So I'm going to try switching to this over the desktop. Wait, where is it at? There it is. Let's see what this does. So you can get a little bit closer look at a MIDI controller. Oh, I got some people watching. Should I retire my MIDI equipment? Tim, no, Tim, you should not retire your MIDI equipment, man. MIDI, yeah, and you got good MIDI equipment. But, again, using the, because I know you're a PreSonus guy too, which is awesome. So you'll get a lot out of this because we're going to get into the real nuts and bolts on PreSonus here. So this is my MIDI controller for my mixer. So basically, I'll pull up the... when I move these faders, they're controlling my software. This over here, it functions as a keyboard, as a drum machine. But again, these pads just send out MIDI data. This is what I run all my headphones through. And then if we go back to our main cam, these are my MIDI keyboards. I got two of them because this one is an 88-key fully weighted keyboard, meaning that there's different types of keys. There's spring action, which is my M audio controller, and this only has 49 keys. Also has pads for running drum machines, transport controls, and a transport control is basically in your recording setup. It's play, stop, rewind, record, all those basic functions we call transport controls. So, and this was a very inexpensive MIDI controller. I think I paid $200, and this is the Arturia. This is a fully weighted 88-key experience. Again, it's got faders, knobs, pads for doing drum machines. I can do all my transport controls, and I can actually control software with this Arturia controller as well. So I really like this keyboard. Again, not that expensive. This was $900, and it came with a ton of software that it's pre-mapped to control, and I look forward to showing you that. So these are keyboard MIDI controllers. You can have guitar MIDI controllers, bass MIDI controllers. So, and again, what's that sound? That's a keyboard sound. Something's playing. So now let me get into, I'm going to pull up my screen here. I'm going to show you what a DAW looks like while we're talking about MIDI controllers. And I do have a special screen here that shows us the DAW. So we're talking about, we covered computer, laptops, interface, very important. Those are steps 1 and 2, because what that interface is going to do is it's going to get sounds into your DAW. And a DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. That's like most famous one is going to be Pro Tools. Logic is another popular one. PreSonus Studio One is which I'm going to be using, is also one of the most popular ones now. And GarageBand. GarageBand is an awesome DAW that comes on pretty much any Apple smart device, which is really cool. And we'll be talking a little bit about that. So let me show you what a DAW looks like. That's my disc control. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So this is Studio One. And this is basically when you open up Studio One, this is their kind of the load-in page. And so I'm going to just pull up and create a new song so we can go through and just talk about the different aspects. And here I get to see this is it's registered my audio interface. I have it set to record at 96K. And so basically, you'll hear about the, recording rate that it's going to record at. And 44.1 is what standard CD is recorded at. 44.1 is great. You can record at that. But nowadays, and I'll open up the control page for my interface, which is all of my desktop icons got moved recently, so sometimes it takes me a second to. There is it. Oh, there it is. Universal control. So basically what we see here is this universal control allows me to look at all my different products that I have. So I have my interface quantum set at 96K. It can go up to 192, which that's going to be basically the highest that you can record at, especially on even most professional studios. And a lot of people look at that as overkill, because if you set something to 192K, we're talking about a lot of processing power and RAM because it's creating the most detailed picture as possible as you're recording it. And so basically what happens, 44.1, which is kind of the lowest that you're going to be able to record at, that's CD quality. So again, everything that you hear on your in your music services, on the radio and all that, that's all at 44.1. Even if it's recorded at 196, when it's processed and bounced out, it's going to end up at 44.1. But the reason when we want to record at higher bit depths than 44.1 is because we're going to get more of the frequencies. We're going to get a much more detailed picture. So as we're mixing down and exporting files, inevitably they get degraded, and eventually if you get it on like a music service or on the radio or something like that, they're going to run it through their filters, so it's going to be eventually end up at 44.1. So you want to have the most detailed picture possible before these other music services start using their filters to basically muck up your beautiful mix. And what it allows at like 192K, it's called, what happens is it's called companding. So when you're recording something, even at 44.1, it's like once it hits that ceiling, it starts to, it doesn't just forget that these frequencies are being recorded, it starts to compand them. So what happens is those frequencies start to get pressed down on the other frequencies, so you start to lose details. That's when you hear people say, oh, my mix sounds really muddy, or it lacks life or punch or warmth or detail. Well, you're going to get that mixing at lower bit depths, because what's happening is those frequencies that your microphone is picking up, and your system therefore is picking up, it realizes as well it's going above the bit depth that we're capable of, so we're just going to squash them down. And so it's like it starts to create a little bit of muddiness, lacks clarity. Those are some of the kind of the buzzwords that you hear thrown around in recording studios, and that's what artists want. I want clarity, I want punch, I want warmth, and we're going to talk about how to achieve that. Well, the first step is going to be to record 96K. To me, that's the optimal, because you're going to capture all the frequencies that you want. You're going to have minimal, if any, companding happening. And then as you bounce down tracks and export your final mix to an MP3, which is usually what you're going to export a mix as, which is 44.1, you're going to have more detail. So when it's chopping away your detail, you're still going to have the detail that you want in your mix. So I always recommend just go ahead and set it at either 48 or 96 if your system can handle it, and you'll be really happy with the results. And again, if your system's only going to handle 44.1, not a big deal. You can compensate for that in the mix, so you know when you're going to bounce down to an MP3 and you're going to lose some of that detail. There's little tweaks you can make to make, because usually what you're going to lose is bass and high-end frequencies. It's just kind of squashing all that stuff down, so the mid-range frequencies start to get muddied up, and that's when we lose that detail, where it kind of sounds just like, I can't hear things, like I do in a professional mix. So again, just setting it to 96. And so let's get back to the DAW itself. So this is Studio One, and like I said, all the general techniques we're going to be talking about can be applied to Pro Tools and Logic and GarageBand. Every recording software DAW looks a little bit different. And I'll tell you the reason I chose Studio One, because I have done plenty of mixing on Pro Tools. I've done a lot of mixing on Logic, and I've even done plenty of mixing on GarageBand. And it was I look at it as, I come at it as a musician. I don't want to have to navigate through all kinds of different files and windows to work on a recording. I just want to be able to drag something in and get to work on it, And PreSonus Studio One was recommended to me because it was like designed for musicians who aren't degreed in like recording engineering, and that was me. That was definitely me. It's like I am a self-taught producer and engineer, and I love how easy it is, and everything is done in one window. Whereas in some of the older program like Pro Tools, well, that was designed for the audio engineer, and so that sometimes it gets a little bit overly complex with me as far as having to set things up, rerouting stuff. Whereas in Studio One, you just drag something in, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in a minute, and it just pops up and it's routed properly and ready to go. So if you're like a musician or a vocalist, looking to work on your own recordings, that's why I'm always going to recommend Studio One. And now Studio One has a new thing. It's called Sphere, where it's just, you pay by the month. It's $14, and you get everything that Studio One makes. Every software plugin, every EQ, compressor, software instrument, and as they come out with new stuff as well, it's just included in your account, and it's only $14 a month. So that's the option I chose to go, instead of, I think if you buy this program just stand alone on the website, or you go to a music store and buy a boxed version of it, you're going to drop like $300 or $400 on that, and then you're going to have to pay for updates and all that, and it doesn't come with every piece of software instruments that PreSonus makes. Whereas if you get Sphere, $14 a month, you're getting every new product, you're getting every product they have available, and they have an amazing education section too on the website with video tutorials that will really get you working with the software quickly. So I'm going to start a new session here, just going to create a new song. And again, it asks me here then to set my sample rate, which I have at 96. And again, that's going to coordinate with what I have my audio interface set at. If I had my interface set to record at 44.1, then this would also read 44.1. And then register the 64-bit float. That's good. And then just like how long's a song, 20 minutes, arbitrary. Tempo, 90 beats per measure. You can change that once you open it up. Time signature is 6/8. I don't want 6/8, I want 4. Well, I'll change it in there. I'll tell you. And you can set the key signature. Here's another great feature, stretch audio files to song tempo. Love it. What that means is if someone sent you a guitar track and they're like, hey, I want you to put some drums and some bass to this, and I want to do it at 96 beats per measure, but I recorded it at 90. I want it to be a little faster. Well, you set the stretch audio. Oh, I'm pointing at the camera and you can't even see me. All you can see is the screen. I can use my mouse. So this here, stretch audio files to song tempo. It's going to stretch all those audio files to the tempo that we set here, which was 90 beats per measure. And then I'm just going to go ahead. I'll just name this Masterclass. So there, I've named my file Masterclass. It's an empty song. All kinds of preset templates here that will have tracks already preloaded for you, so you don't have to set your own. I always just like to pretty much basically start with an empty song. So I'm going to do that. Okay. And this is the DAW. Studio One, empty. Nothing set up. Again, Time signature, I'm going to change to 4/4 just because it's easy to, just the most common time there. We were working on some Latin music and doing some stuff in 6/8. So now it's in 4/4. 4 beats per measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then here we have our tempo. So that means when I play it back, I'm going to engage my metronome there. So now when I play it, we hear the click track. And so again, that's clicking at 90. I can change that to 100, faster. Let's go back to 90. Excellent. Oh, stayed at 100. Okay, so this is your open pane here. And I'm going to pull up, I'm going to create an audio track. And normally when you create an audio track, let's say you're going to do a vocal recording. And, you know, before I get too much into the DAW, there's a few more things I wanted to discuss as we just see my face mode. Yeah, it is. Hey, everybody. There you now you can see me. I was doing all these hand gestures and talking, and I realized all you could see is the screen. And I will get back into Studio One shortly, too. And I know definitely, Tim, you're looking forward to getting into Studio One here with me, so I'm excited to do that. A couple more things we want to talk about. Okay, so you're just starting from scratch. Hey, I want to build my own home studio. So we talked about treating your room, looking for those trouble spots where you're going to get reflection. We talked about getting the right computer or laptop or device. And we talked about getting the proper audio interface, whether that be a 1-channel to an 8-channel, and the different types: Thunderbolt, Firewire, USB. Those are the 3 biggies for home recording studios. So the next component that is really going to be important is going to be how you're going to hear your audio. We talked about monitors. So monitor is just another word for a speaker. So I have, like I said, I have the Yamaha HS8s. I chose those, one, because Yamaha makes incredibly accurate sounding monitors, and they are cost effective. These were like $300. I think I paid $600 for the pair. You can spend anywhere from $100 per pair to $100,000 for a set of monitors, which is ridiculous to me. I chose these because they were in my budget and they sound fantastic. And with the 8-inch woofer here, again, you're going to hear more of the bass. I work on a lot of scoring, film scores and commercial scores that have a lot of bass rumble, and I need to be able to hear that. And I also work on a lot of electronic music and hip-hop tracks as well with fatter bass tones. And with an 8-inch woofer, I can hear that. When I use, like, this is a 5-inch, which I use just to monitor my keyboards so I can hear it in stereo when I'm working on a track. With a 5-inch woofer, you're not going to get the bass response. You know, when I was trying to mix stuff on the fly on those, I would send the mix to somebody and be like, man, that bass is heavy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I can barely hear it over here. So I'm cranking up the bass, not realizing, well, the speaker's not capable of recreating that bass frequency. So I didn't know I was over mixing the bass in my mixes. So I got the HS8s, and I can hear those bass frequencies properly, so I can make better decisions when I'm mixing. And again, choosing the size of speakers is going to depend on the size of your room as well. If your room is absolutely tiny and you can like touch your speaker and touch your wall here, an 8-inch speaker is going to put out more volume and power. It might be a little bit too big for your room, because you do want to run speakers when you start to turn a speaker down, because it's you start to lose you start to lose bit depth. So it needs to be pushed to a certain level so the amplifiers, which are built into the speakers, are running at their optimal level. And on a larger speaker, you got to push it a little bit harder than you would a smaller one. So sometimes people would say, well, you have to push an 8-inch speaker too hard for a small room. I kind of disagree. My room is not huge, and again, I have the proper treatment, so I can crank these, I can push these the way they're supposed to be. I'm not killing my neighbors or the people that live upstairs or anything like that, So I'm always going to recommend an 8-inch, but again, if you have 5-inch or usually 5.5, perfect. You can definitely, but again, the other component to that, being able to accurately play back your mixes, one way to eliminate the room altogether, headphones. Headphones are tremendously important. So that, again, that's what we're talking about, the components. You got your monitor speakers, and headphones. So there's just basically two different types of headphones that I think we need to keep in mind for, and that's closed back headphones and open back headphones. The ones I'm wearing right now are open back, which means, I don't know if you can really see it, but they're ventilated. So you're not getting as much sound pressure going into your ears, but you get a lot of bleed out of these. I wouldn't record vocal tracks or a track that had an open mic with open back headphones, because you're going to hear the click track, you're going to hear the backing tracks playing. It's going to be picked up by that microphone. If I'm doing drums, not a big deal, or a guitar track, again, not a big deal, because those are such loud sound sources, the mic isn't going to pick them up. But again, without the isolation, it's hard, you're hearing everything going on in the room. Open back headphones are awesome for mixing, because you're going to get the sound stage is going to be more accurately represented. You can get more bass from them, and they are way gentler on your ears, because after about 35 to 45 minutes, you're going to start experiencing ear fatigue if you're mixing on headphones. It's just your eardrums are just taking a beating, basically, because you got and this is what a closed back set looks like. These are what I use for tracking, and again, there's no bleed out of these. They have great isolations. When I picked my headphones, my favorite headphone company is Beyerdynamic. That's what these are. They're not the most cost effective, but I love the way they sound. Beyerdynamic builds amazing headphones. And I also love Audio Technica. Now, Audio Technica does have very affordable headphones. I think these closed back headphones were $79. They sound incredible. But again, if you're shopping on Sweetwater, so many of these companies make amazing headphones. Again, if your budget's $100 for a set of headphones, you're going to get a good set of headphones for $100. And so for mixing, I recommend an open back or semi-open, which means that there's a little bit more isolation, but you're still getting that breathing, of the open back. And then for tracking, if you're tracking your vocals or tracking acoustic guitar or something, then you're going to want closed back headphones. Some of the advantages, though, of using headphones is it takes your room completely out of the scenario. It doesn't matter, if say you just don't have the option to have sound treatment, or maybe you're mixing on the go. Maybe it's just you got your laptop, a little MIDI controller, and you're working on tracks in a hotel room. Well, then, headphones. Absolutely. Headphones are, a key component, and they take the room out of the equation. And then it's just getting the right pair of headphones for you, that fits in your budget, but it's also quality. So usually when it comes to headphones, though, you don't want to skimp. You don't want to skimp too much because you're counting on them for accuracy. And with headphones, it's difficult to get full representation of bass. Again, they're smaller speakers. To create the full bass wave requires a larger speaker. So, you're not going to get quite the accurate representation of the bass, but with an open back, well-designed headphone, the loss of bass is going to be very minimal. I would trust mixing an album on these Beyerdynamic open back headphones without thinking twice. These things were like $250, and for me, that's spending a lot on headphones. I like to try to keep my headphone budget around $150. You can get closed back Beyerdynamic headphones for $150. The DT770s. Amazing headphones. So headphones and monitors, very important. And also the other important key when you're setting up your home studio is making sure that your monitors are decoupled from from your desk surface. So a couple ways to do that. Basically whatever desk you choose is arbitrary, whatever you like. I just picked this big one because I knew I was going to have a lot of components that I wanted right in front of me, and extra shelves to fit crap on, and I wanted to make sure I could have my little knickknacks all over the place and stuff. So, the Boglins hanging out. So I chose a larger desk where I can put my rack mount gear, and when I say rack mount, which means it can, the rack mount gear comes with these 4 holes in it that you can actually mount them into the equipment with the screws, and they usually come with the screws. And everything is measured out to fit. It's like a standard measurement. So I could rack mount some stuff in there, and then I have room to expand over there, and Bella loves to sleep under there. I don't see her right now, which means she's in the other room probably doing something bad. And I also like this desk because it had room for my monitor computer monitor and my audio monitors. And decoupling. So getting these off the surface. You don't just want to set the speaker down flat on the desk because the speaker's vibrating and it's going to vibrate your desk. So again, it's going to affect your level of accuracy and you'll hear things rattling. So you want to decouple them. I got these decouplers. They were like $100 for the pair, and they got the rubber feet with another layer of rubber with a layer of foam with another layer of rubber, and it allows me to get them at the proper angle and the proper placement, and not there's no sympathetic vibrations off of my desk. And you can also get speaker stands. I don't know if you can see this speaker over here is on a speaker stand. These are real cheap. You can get a pair of these for like $49. They work awesome. So you can also use speaker stands as well. And they have like the built-in padding on them, and that way that the speaker is decoupled from the surface. So that's actually a really important concept, because we want an accurate listening environment for mixing. It's a very it's audio surgery. It's a very surgical procedure, so we got to make sure we have accuracy. And those are some of the common mistakes you see in the novice home studio is, I'm just going to plunk my speakers down on the desk. It's like, no, you don't want to do that. Just even if you have real low-end speakers, just getting them isolated off the surface is going to improve the quality of your mix. Just hanging a blanket behind your speakers and behind your head is going to improve the quality of your mix, because then your speakers are going to be able to function optimally. So, and what's great about most modern monitors, speakers, is that the amplifiers are built right into them. So they're perfectly tuned to the speaker in their cabinet. You can get speakers that are passive that require an external amplifier, like in the old stereo systems used to. I got to have my amplifier. But I find I just prefer having the amplifiers built in, one less component to deal with and one less thing to pay for. So, and most modern monitors are going to have the perfect amp design for the speaker cabinet. So get the right set of monitors, get the right set of headphones. And then, some of the other components that I use, I have a headphone monitor, and the PreSonus, again, all of my outboard gear, my interface, my MIDI controllers, my MIDI controller mixer, and my headphone, all PreSonus products. And what I love that's another thing I love about PreSonus is, one, the products aren't that expensive, but they're optimized for the recording software, so I don't have to go in there and map all of these buttons and knobs and faders to work with the software. You plug it in, it recognizes that product, and boom, just maps everything for you perfectly. So yeah, I guess I'm on the PreSonus bandwagon. I should get a PreSonus t-shirt or something. So, okay, next important component. We talked about the computer, talked about our interface, talked about making our room sound right, talked about getting the right speakers, getting the right headphones. Next is microphones. So you might be saying, I know what a microphone is, but I don't know a whole lot about microphones. And I kind of have a microphone fetish. I love microphones because they are so important in the recording process. And again, some of the best microphones aren't the most expensive microphones. You can spend anywhere from $50 to $25,000 on a microphone. I've never had the luxury of spending $25,000 on a microphone, but I have had the luxury of spending $100 or $200. So I'm going to talk about the different types of mics right now. And the two major different types of microphones are going to be a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone. Dynamic microphones are going to be used more for miking loud sound sources. Basically, it's the way the microphone is built. They're not as sensitive as a condenser microphone. So you got your microphone element, which is then suspended in, the capsule, and the sound pressure then makes it move back and forward to get your sound. And so this is the Shure SM57. You can get these for $99, and half the time you can get them for even cheaper when they go on sale, kind of thing. This is probably the most recorded mic in history, because it's not just because it's inexpensive, it's just an awesome sounding microphone. This is what you're going to put on your snare drum. This is what you're going to put on your guitar cabinet. I know people that have used them for vocals, but this is like the go-to dynamic microphone. And it doesn't require phantom power because it doesn't rely on a magnetic field for the diaphragm to be suspended in. So basically, you can just plug it in and you're ready to go. They're also built like tanks. You know, it's a mic that can. I mean, I covet my mic so I don't drop them, but it's one of those microphones you'll see up on stage on every live show, and it's like they can take a beating, you know. And so, highly recommending grabbing yourself one, if not two, SM57s, and it's made by Shure, the Shure microphone company, and they've been around forever, and you know, they make incredible microphones, and again, it's just very cost effective. You know, this is what I'm going to put on some of my hand drums. You know, this is what I'm going to use to mic louder percussion sources. Like I said, guitar cabinets, let's go to snare drum, go to microphone, the SM57. It's a dynamic microphone. And so then when you're going to get into more, especially vocals, we're going to look at condenser microphones, miking a piano, miking a string section, miking quieter percussion. You know, we look at a condenser microphone. And again, I recommend Rode microphones. I love Rode microphones. They sound incredible, made in Australia, but again, really, really cheap. You know, to get a microphone that sounds as good as this one, this is the NT1A. It's $229, and it comes with the shock mount, which I'm going to show you in a second, and the pop filter. And it sounds like a microphone that cost $1,500, you know. And they build wonderful microphones there in Australia. That's the Rode company. And so with this microphone, with the condenser microphone, this is what your go-to for recording a vocal. And this is a solid state mic, meaning it doesn't use a vacuum tube to generate its power source. I also have one of Rode's tube mics, and you know, basically the difference between solid state and tube. You know, people say, "Oh, tube gets a little bit more warmth, kind of a more vintage sound," and I definitely would agree with that because it relies on a vacuum tube to generate its power. This is solid state, meaning there's no tube, which means that it's well, it's one less component to break, let's put it that way. You drop a tube mic, you're pretty much screwed. Something is getting broken in it. You drop this, well, you're still kind of screwed, but you're not going to break a tube. But condenser microphones, again, they're very sensitive microphones, and they require what's called phantom power, which you're going to be able to engage on your interface. And it requires a steady 48 volts being sent to it because the diaphragm actually then is suspended in the magnetic field. That's where you get that sensitivity from. And so that's where you can get those whisper quiet vocals. You can get the soft passage of a string recording or the nuances of a small percussion instrument. That's going to come from a condenser microphone. So we talked about condenser microphones, dynamic microphones. And I talk about the diaphragm. I can't take this apart to show you, but the diaphragm is actually what's recording the sound inside of there. And this is a large diaphragm microphone, which means the diaphragm itself is, well, large. Compared to what I have here is a small diaphragm condenser microphone, which looks like this. Again, the same concept. It requires phantom power because the little diaphragm, the small diaphragm, is suspended in the magnetic field in there. And these are great for recording acoustic guitars, pianos, strings, drums, overheads on drums. I love SE microphones because, again, cost effective, but they sound incredible. And they're real high quality products. So SE Electronics, Rode, and Shure, you cannot go wrong with any of their microphones. So now, with a dynamic microphone, these can be handled. So basically, when you see someone singing live and hold their microphone, that's more than likely a dynamic microphone. There are handheld condensers now, but 9 out of 10 times, especially in smaller clubs, you're going to see it's going to be a dynamic microphone because you can hold this and it's not going to get handling noise, and you can move it like this and it's not going to pick up the wind and things like that. You can't hold a condenser microphone for the most part. Like I said, they do make handheld condensers now, but when you're doing your vocal tracks in the studio, you're going to put this in a shock mount, which looks like this. And so basically that microphone sits in there, and this prevents it from moving. You know, it allows it to, any of slight movements aren't going to be picked up by the microphone. And what I love about that, the Rode setup I was telling you about, the NT1A package, is it also comes with a pop screen or wind filter that fits right into the, I don't want to break this, fits right into the shock mount like that. And so when you're recording a vocal, if you don't have a windscreen on it, you're going to pick up plosives and sibilants. And a plosive is basically, I got a little windscreen on this, so it's not as bad. But that's when you hear your P's or B's, and you get that pop, which you can even kind of hear on this headset microphone I'm using. Well, your windscreen or pop filter does exactly, it eliminates those by breaking up the wind as it comes through into the microphone. It's like we talked about, dispersing the wind, so it's not directly hitting the diaphragm. And we're going to get into some very advanced like vocal and instrument recording techniques in later sessions for sure. We're actually going to set up the mic and we're going to listen to different ways to record vocals. Today is just our, like I said, the rudimentary introduction to recording. And for the person that's like looking to enhance or set up their system from scratch. So we talked about dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, small diaphragm condenser microphones. There's another type of microphone which I don't have at the moment, but also recommend. It's a ribbon microphone that uses a very thin aluminum ribbon to record the movement of air and sound waves. And a lot of vintage microphones, the old RCA microphones, are ribbon elements, and they don't have the sensitivity of a condenser mic, but they have a little bit more clarity than you would find in a traditional dynamic microphone. And also those are the kind of mics that if you drop it, you probably screwed it up kind of thing. But you can get very inexpensive. Rode makes a ribbon microphone that's awesome on vocals for like $700. You can get them. SE makes one that's like $300. And what people will say, like the most common thing you hear about people who love ribbon microphones like myself, is it's very natural sounding. Something about the way that ribbon picks up sound frequencies, it just makes it sound like you're standing right there beside the vocalist or the instrument that's being played. And thankfully the price of ribbon microphones has come down as they've gained popularity more recently. So you're seeing a lot of companies make them. So that's basically the different types of microphones you're going to be using. And again, for me, it's about keeping it budget friendly. That's why I choose like Rode microphones, because of the quality. The sound is amazing and it fits in my budget. Like I said, the SM57, that can be your go-to. That's a $100 microphone. I said like you can get it probably on a President's Day sale right now at Guitar Center for $79. The vocal version of the SM57 is the SM58, and the only difference is it's the exact same capsule, which is this thing in there that captures the sound. Like, can I screw this off? No, I'll just break it. I don't want to do that. Oh, yeah, maybe I can. What's this? Nope, that's the guts. Anyway, the SM58, exact same microphone, but you'll see it's got a big silver ball on it, and essentially that's just the built-in windscreen, and it keeps you from putting your lips right up on that, but it cancels out those plosives. So when you see that microphone, the vocalist in a lot of rock bands, that SM58 is just an amazing microphone. Same price, like $99. Probably get it President's Day sale, $79. So, and again, like I said before, I get all my stuff at Sweetwater because they do the price matching, but they're always the cheapest. And they come with the built-in warranties, and they can get stuff shipped here to my house in Canton, Ohio, from their warehouse in Indiana in one day. So if I ordered something before 11 a day, it's sitting on my porch the next day, and it's free shipping, which I love. And their customer service is amazing, and they have all kinds of product demo videos. That's the kind of music retail that I think is doing it right. And as someone, like I said, that worked at Guitar Center, managed the Pro Audio Department at Guitar Center, that was kind of that wasn't the kind of culture I like to be involved with. It was very competitive, and it was about pushing products even if you didn't believe in it. Sweetwater's just the opposite. They don't work on commission, so they're not trying to sell you crap you don't need. So that's my Sweetwater plug for the day. Okay, so there we go, microphone. So now you might be asking, well, how do I plug my microphone in? And that's a great question, because cabling is going to be the next consideration to take in mind when you're building your home studio. So what kind of cables are you going to need? And there's going to be quite a few different types of cables, especially even for a smaller home studio, because there's so many different ways we can plug things in to our computers. So like I talked about with your interface, and when you buy an interface, it's always going to come with the cable that you need to plug it in. So when I bought this Thunderbolt interface, it came with the Thunderbolt cable. If you buy a USB interface, it's going to come with a USB cable. Like I said, you just want to make sure that you have the proper inputs on it. Every computer is going to have a variety of different plugs, from USB to HDMI. If you're getting a Mac product, it's going to have that Thunderbolt already built into it. Again, even though I have PC, I had them put a special card in it to use Thunderbolt. And so for a microphone, it's called an XLR cable, and it looks like this. It's got 3 prongs. I'll get it close up for you. 3 prongs like that, 3 holes like that. And so this side with the 3 holes gets plugged into the microphone. You see the 3 prongs. Boom, plugged in. And then I plug the side with the 3 prongs into my interface. And these 8 inputs are what we call, they have built-in microphone preamps, which basically takes this microphone signal and it allows you to amplify it then into your AD conversion. So these have great built-in preamps. And you just plug it in like that. Boom, good to go. My microphone is now plugged in and ready to use. And again, if you have a condenser microphone, it's the same 3-prong XLR cable. And you just engage phantom power. And usually it says 48V, which means that that's the phantom power. You can turn it on or off. You never want to run phantom power into a ribbon microphone. So then if I plugged in my condenser microphone, I would just make sure my phantom power is on. Boom, just like that. So when you're plugging in a microphone, XLR cable. And of course, when you're buying this stuff, you can always ask your sales rep and they'll be able to cue you in. But other types of cables we are going to commonly use in the studio are going to be 2 different types of 1/4-inch cables. And so you see the 1/4-inch is the bit fatter input. And so this is a TRS cable, tip ring sleeve. It's got 2 lines on it, as opposed to an instrument cable, which you'll use to plug in keyboards or a guitar or a bass, which just has 1. So those are 1/4-inch cables, instrument cables, and there's general TRS cables. Very helpful to have. And what other kind of cables are you going to need? Again, your interface is going to come with the proper cables. But those are the big 3, making sure that you have, if you're going to be plugging a guitar into your interface, that you have the right instrument cable. If you're going to be plugging into your speakers, those are going to require TRS cables. And so it's getting the right cabling. You don't have to buy the most expensive cables. I mean, you'll see an XLR cable that's 10 foot for $19, and then you'll see like a higher end version for $60. And basically some of the differences are the quality of the copper that they're using in the wiring and the shielding that they're using as well. Higher end cables tend to use higher density copper so that you get maybe a little bit better signaling. I don't know. I don't tend to buy the most expensive cables. I buy the one that's like Sweetwater Proco is kind of like their house brand. Those cables are fantastic. Lifetime replacement guarantee, meaning if your dog, like mine did yesterday, chews 2 of them in half when you're not looking for 2 minutes. I don't know how she did that so quickly. But I just send it back to Sweetwater and they send me a new one. And some cables will claim that the more expensive ones, that they have some type of correction where the shielding is different for different frequencies. I don't know about that. I mean, we're really splitting hairs now. And if you got the budget to get the Mogami cable, that's $100 for 25 feet, then that's your choice for sure. But I just like to use the house brand Sweetwater Proco cables. They work fantastic. I've never had a problem. And I also, when I use those expensive cables next to the less expensive ones, I can't tell the difference at all, And now all these cable companies are giving you that lifetime free replacement, which to me is just a great thing, because, that's the thing with cables is you plugging in, unplugging, wrapping up, all that kind of stuff. You kind of start to go through cables. All right, we got viewers, awesome. So those are the different types of cables. Your microphone cable is called an XLR cable, and then for your speakers, you're going to get the TRS cable, and then for instruments like keyboards or guitars, an instrument cable, 1/4-inch. There's also like little 1/8-inch ones that you'll see when you're plugging into like, Apple doesn't even use 1/8-inch anymore. They use that little lightning connector. But the 1/8-inch one is like your typical. It's on your headphones. Let me show you just. For reference, looks like that, real small. And then they always come with adapters that take an 1/8-inch into a 1/4-inch. You can plug it in like that. Very good. All right, you're doing good. We're doing good. So we're really getting into those brass. Okay, so now let's talk. Okay, we talked about monitors, headphones, stands, room treatment. Excellent. Okay, so microphones, and let's get into some MIDI, MIDI controllers, because especially in modern music, MIDI controllers become essential. And basically, like I said, MIDI, musical instrument digital interface. And so this looks like an 88 key keyboard, but it is not, because there are no sounds in this. If I have this thing turned off and not hooked to a computer, that's what it sounds like. Nothing. Same with the M audio here. Sounds like nothing. This mixer actually doesn't have mic preamps or anything. It just controls software. So does my little Atom SQ, also a PreSonus product. All these pads and knobs, all they do is control software. And so much of what we do now in modern recordings, and especially in the home studio, which I think gives us a tremendous advantage, is using software instruments. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll pull one up and basically show you, how do I got everything on? Yep. Kind of show you how the MIDI controller works. So I'm going to switch my screen to there we go. Oh, nice graphic there, Ben. Okay, so we got, now you can see my screen. So I come over here. So let's say you get PreSonus Studio One. And this is what an instrument track looks like. So this is what you would use to record like a vocal. And I can tell by this little thing that shows a little sound wave there. But let's talk about MIDI for a minute and software instruments. So I come over here and it says in this section here, which I'm circling, this is my browser section. So I have all of my software instruments. I have all of my software effects. I got a ton of them. Loops, which means basically a loop is a pre-recorded piece of something. Let me see if I can pull one up here and just kind of show you. Let's see. Let's look at a guitar loop. 9-volt audio, animated. Okay, what do you got for me? Pull that in here. Again, what I love about Studio One is, as you see, I didn't have to open up a track. All I did is said, I want to hear this loop, and I pulled it in. I can also preview it here by just double-clicking it. So that's what that thing sounds like. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like, you know what? I kind of dig that. And what I like, too, is as I preview this, it's playing it back because I have this little thing here, the metronome engaged. It's playing it back at my tempo of 100. And so I'm like, I dig that. I just drug it in here, and now I'm going to hit play on my mixer, and it's going to play it back in the actual track. This is the actual track here now. All right. So there we go. It's like, I like that sound. And now I want to copy that, and I want to make it. I want to hear that thing twice. So there we go. We can hear the click track going. We hear that it's in perfect tempo. Turn the click track off. Awesome. So that is a loop. So basically somebody at PreSonus made that up for me, and there's all kinds of loops. And again, what's so fun about, I love loops, and even though I'm a musician and I can play keyboards and guitars and drums, not only are loops time-saving, but to me they spur creativity. Sometimes I'm sitting here and it's like, I want to work on music, and that's one thing I'll look at you in the eyes when I talk about this. Nope, that's not. Yep, and I look at you in the eyes when I say this next part. But I look at you in the eyes when I say this next part. Here we go. Take 3. Okay, so like I was talking about, why a reason I love loops. One, they're time saving. If I'm working on like a commercial score or a track for something that's like, I don't want to pull up the keyboard and make up something from my own brain, kind of thing. You hear all these great loops, but also a lot of times I'm like, to me, if you want to improve your skills as a producer, as an engineer, or as a composer, you got to work on something basically every day. Even if it's just 30 minutes to an hour of practicing. When we're practicing our mixes, that means we have to have mixes to work on. And like I said, if I'm not feeling inspired to sit down and write something from scratch on the piano or the guitar, I love loops because it allows me to create something to to basically practice with on the fly like that. Maybe I want to practice drums to an R&B track, and I can just pull in an R&B guitar, pull in an R&B bass, pull in a keyboard part, and like 50 seconds later, I got a full band recording going that I can just jam along to. So it spurs that creativity. But what's going to allow you to become a great producer and a great composer quickly is by working on stuff every day. Just creating a little track. It can be 30 seconds of something, but using your skills. Because I find in the past, where I've taken a break. Maybe I didn't have projects going, or I got busy with doing stuff with Warrior Beat, so we were out doing drum trainings and traveling, and I couldn't sit down here and work on music every day. I forget stuff because there are so many shortcuts that we'll get into in later sessions. Like, you don't have to use your mouse to open up this, to do this. You can just click Control G and something happens. I forget all that stuff. So, it's like I like the recording software to function as an instrument for me. So the less I have to think about technically, the more fun I have as a musician. And that's just repetition. Repetition is the pathway to mastery, whether it be learning guitar, drums, keyboards, learning a language, learning how to work on a car, build, use construction tools. Repetition makes us masters, and I know Herbie Hancock always said you got to get in your 10,000 repetitions or your 10,000 hours on the instrument to become a true master. And so that means, every day working on something. And that's why I love loops, because I might not be feeling inspired, but I start going through these different loops and I hear one that's like, that's really cool. I pull it in there, and I make it loop for 2 minutes, and then I'm like, I can hear a guitar part to that now, so it spurs our creativity. So let's get back more into some of the MIDI controllers. I'm going to go back to our desktop view, and there it is. Okay, so that's an audio track. I'm going to remove that, and we're going to focus on a MIDI controller and how it works. So we looked at the different things that come with PreSonus. So, and just another, I guess, plug for PreSonus. So when I come down here now, these instruments, you'll hear them say like comes with it, or it's a third-party plugin. Third-party just means a company other than PreSonus makes it, like TuneTrack is one of my favorites I would not want to live without. G-Force is another one I love. East West is all my orchestra stuff, and I'm going to show you in depth on all these and my Arturia stuff. Arturia makes that white keyboard that I have, so when I open up an Arturia program, which I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to stick to some PreSonus stuff to show you how cool. Like I said, for $14 a month with the PreSonus Sphere, you're getting all this stuff included. The Impact, which is a drum machine. And then I'm going to open up, we'll just work with this right now. So this is a piece of software, and it is controlled by an outboard gear. So when I'm working with PreSonus, I come over here and I get all my metadata here. So right now, what's controlling this? Well, everything that I have that's a MIDI controller is. I want to make it so just my Atom SQ is. And I'm going to switch back to my screens to show you what the Atom SQ is. Whoops, not that screen. This. What did I do? There we go. I want to switch to the mixer cam, yeah. So the Atom SQ is this piece of equipment here. So this is basically just different pads, and it is now controlling the drum machine. So that's what the Atom SQ looks like. I got my knobs, I got this. I can control all the software. I got my stop, play, record, metronome buttons, all in this one little piece of gear. You could actually just get an Atom SQ and do all of the functions that you see on the fader port pretty much with your Atom SQ. Fader port was $1,000. Atom SQ is $250. I love them both, but I tell you what, this Atom SQ as a PreSonus user was probably the best $250 I've spent. It is an awesome. I've had it for about 3 weeks. It's a very new product for them, and it's just so awesome, and it's so small. It just sits right here, and this is one of those things you can take on a bus or on a plane or something like that, and be chilling out, on a bus ride, just jamming out, because this thing is only about a foot long. So anyway, so this is the MIDI controller, and now I'm going to switch back to the PreSonus cam here, and you can see those different pads as they're lighting up. That's me hitting that little controller. It's controlling the software. You're not hearing anything though, because I haven't assigned anything yet. So basically, you can either come up here to your, when it comes up as default, for some reason I just have my default set that nothing comes up, so I can start from scratch. But they have all kinds of presets. Gold Baby Drums is awesome. So these are, and again, this all these different sound sets come with PreSonus Sphere. So let's just choose Alien Robot Drums. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So I'm playing on my Atom SQ. And all of these are all pre-mapped. So that's what a MIDI controller does. It controls the software instrument. And the software instrument is what's going to generate your sounds. And I can change these to be whatever I want. And we'll talk a lot more in later sessions, because that is going to get to more advanced stuff about, all the different ways to use these programs, automation, creating custom samples. We're going to get into all that. So that's I love my Atom SQ for doing drum samples, bass samples. And now we'll look at like a keyboard MIDI controller. So again, I'm going to stick with the PreSonus program, and I'm going to pull in presence. Again, I'm just dragging it over, throwing it in there, boom, sets up the channel for me. I'm going to assign that to be controlled by the Keylab 88, which is that big white keyboard thing that I have there. And we'll hear again, no sound, because I have my default set to nothing. And I'm going to use a piano. So again, these are all the different types. We have bass guitars, electronic basses, brass. Deep Flight 1 is a really cool EDM program. I'll pull up an E piano. Now let's pull up a natural piano. And so the PreSonus Studio Grand. There it is. Why aren't you loading? Oh, that's why. And I want the Studio Grand. So now it's loading up. So it went from sounding like nothing. So now I'm playing on and I'm going to switch over to the other camera here for a second so you can see what I'm doing. Oh, did I not switch the cameras right? No. Sorry, I had that wrong camera up. Let me do this real quick. So this is the software program. This is Presence. And again, I'm going to remove that. I thought you were watching my screen there. You weren't. You were looking at the mixer doing nothing. Remove track and instrument. Okay, so I take this program Presence, which is a general sampler for Studio One. It has every kind of sample and sound set you're going to want. And so I pulled up the Studio Grand. So now we get piano sounds. And now I'm going to switch back so you can see how I'm controlling that. I'm going to set that to be controlled by my Keylab 88. And let's switch back over so I can show you what that looks like. So here we go now with the Keylab 88. Awesome. So now all that software I'm controlling with a real keyboard. So that's what a MIDI controller does. This one is fully weighted, meaning underneath this here, there's actually weights and hammers, so it feels like a real piano. They are weighted keys. This is spring action, which means that there's just a little spring. So there's not a lot of weight behind it. More traditional organs, synthesizers, the old B3s and everything, those are all spring action. And so I like to have access to both. This M Audio makes great keyboard controllers. So does PreSonus. Also make small keyboard controllers as well. $150, $200 for a 49 key. And this also has pads on it, so I can use this to control my drum machines. Again, the only thing is when you get this as a third party, meaning PreSonus does not own or make M Audio products, I have to go in and program this basically to function in Studio One. Whereas if you buy a keyboard made by Studio One, it's going to come pre-programmed. Same here with the Arturia, the Keylab. When I open up an Arturia program, it's pre-mapped to that. So every knob, every fader, every button that can do something is already assigned to do what it's supposed to do, which I love. So how are we doing on time? Well, we're doing good. I'm going to go till 2 o'clock today. And again, this is supposed to be interactive. And so if you have questions, or if you even say, hey, for the next session, I really want to learn this or that, you let me know, and that's exactly what we can focus on. Again, today was about what are those components you need to set up your own home studio? What would I like to get into now? So let's get into some of the very basics. Let's say, okay, hey Trev, I got all my stuff set up now. It's all working. How do I record sound? That's a great question. So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch over top here to the mixer cam. And again, what's fun about having like the fader port 16 here is I got all my faders like a real mixer. I got my play pause button, my record button, stop, fast forward, loops, click track. I can control every aspect of the software with this device in very, very good detail. And all these faders are automated faders, meaning that they when you set automation, they're motorized. That's what I meant to say. These are motorized faders. So when you set automation, you can see them moving and stuff on their own. So it's a very advanced piece of gear, and I love it. It took me a minute because I'm used, for the majority of my earlier recordings, especially like in New York when I had a small studio, I was mixing on my mouse. And so I use the mouse. So now let's talk about recording basics. So let's say you want to record this piano track, and I'm going to show you simultaneously what MIDI looks like as well versus real audio. So we got Presence pulled up, which is this program here included with Studio One. I got the grand piano pulled up. My metronome is set 100 beats. I'm going to change that down to 90, a little bit slower. And so we come over here, and this is kind of the controls for each different track or channel. So track 2, track 1's an audio. Track 1 is our drum machine. Track 2 is our piano. Right now, if I was to hit record, nothing would happen because I haven't armed the track. And the way you arm a track is by hitting this red. This means it's recording. I can do that either on my mixer, or I can do it just with the mouse. And this little thing here is your monitor button, meaning that you can hear what's happening in the track as you're recording it. So this means solo. This means that you can only hear what's happening in this track, not what's happening in this track. And this is mute. When I mute a track, that means everything else will play except this track. And we'll get into more mixing and stuff, why all of these are just so important. So let's go ahead and just record a MIDI track here. So again, I've armed my track. I've got it set to input monitoring so I can hear what's going on. Got it assigned so my white keyboard, the Keylab 88 is controlling it. Awesome. And now I'm going to hit record. And I'm going to turn on my metronome. I want to hear that click track as well. And then if I hit this little button here, this means it's going to give me pre-roll click, a count in. And so I'll open up this little thing here. All these 3 buttons here in Studio One, these control your metronome. See, it says metronome right there. And then this is going to mean that my pre-count is in. And I have my pre-count set to 1 bar, which means I'm going to hear 4 clicks before it actually starts recording, which is helpful. It gives you a little, sometimes I'll set it to 2. Sometimes if I have to run across the room to stand in front of my microphone, I'll set it to 4, so it gives me some lead-in time. So I got all that stuff set. You can change the sound of your metronome here. I'll just go ahead and hit play so we can hear our metronome. I can change that to click. I can change it to a cowbell. I can have it so it accents that first. The accent is a cowbell, and then the beat is a clave. I can change it to all cowbell. And then you can even add off beats. And you can hear that click, that's giving me an offbeat eighth note. All very helpful stuff. That cowbell's not my first choice for a sound. So we're just going to stick with that, and the clave is the accent. So now I know my downbeat, the 1, is the clave, that click, and then the beat is the smaller ones. Okay, so we got our metronome set. So let's go ahead and record something. So I'm just going to hit record, and again I'm going to get that 4 seconds pre-roll. And now we see it moving in the green there. That means we're recording. And what the great thing is with MIDI is it actually doesn't record any data until I hit the keyboard. So I just record something simple. Do, E, and. It's a hit song right there. All right, so we stop, and then we can see this is what MIDI data looks like. So I can just close this for a second so we can see the screen better. This is what MIDI data looks like. And again, it's essentially binary code. And then what I love about MIDI, and we have all these different menus in PreSonus, so this is the MIDI menu for MIDI editing. This is what that piano sounds like. We'll go ahead and play it back. Turn off the click. You can hear, you know, it was not totally dead on. So I can even go through real quick, and I'll do a more advanced class on quantizing and editing MIDI. But I just like, you know what, I want this to lock in hard. And I was playing eighth notes, so I come up here to eighth notes. I'm going to quantize it. Basically, quantizing means it's going to lock in all these MIDI notes to the metronome value that I have set it to, which I have set it to an eighth note. So it is going to make sure every one of these notes that I played is perfectly on the eighth note. And then I just do that by selecting them, hitting Q. You saw them move a little bit there. So now when I play it back, it is perfectly locked in. Right on my... You know, and we'll get into like applying swing to that, you know, humanizing it so it doesn't sound as mechanical. And the other thing I can do too is edit each, and you know, well, I got them all selected right now, but I can, like, I want these to ring out more. I want that one to ring out more. I want that one to ring out more. Well, I can make them do that by just very simple, you know. So we just recorded our first track. So again, the basics to recording, and this is going to work in any platform that you work, is you arm your track like that little red button. Red button, like we always see in the classic movies, means I am recording. And then you can either come down here and hit your record button, and it's going to start recording. Or again, I just have the MIDI controller, which I'll pull up here. The mixer cam. And so I just, when I want to record, I just hit record. My metronome starts. I can turn my metronome off and on here. Stop it. You know, I didn't hit the note, so all right, good. So that's good. That's good for session 1. You know, I'll just do a quick recap here, because now we're starting to get into some really more advanced techniques. And I do want to grab my phone, and I'm going to pull up GarageBand. I think that's important. I want to make that connection while we're starting. So I got an iPhone here, and I'm going to look, and where's Garage? There's GarageBand. So I'm opening up GarageBand. And again, when you open up GarageBand, let me get up close here. It says create song. I'm going to create a song. Audio recorder. That means it's going to use the microphone, which is built in to my phone. Or you can get interfaces for these that plug in via the Lightning connector. They would be iOS interfaces. Just any old interface isn't going to work on an iPhone. It has to be specifically for an iOS device. And I'm going to choose, you know what, I want to do a string recording, so I'm going to choose this Smart Strings. Cool. So it's coming through from this little Bluetooth speaker. But let me get to the this part here. Not that part. I don't remember GarageBand like I thought I do. Come on. What's going on? Okay, so here, just like on my PreSonus, we see I have a guitar track pulled up, and then we see it's down in 4/4. We have different measures, and hit record. It's got your metronome count in, stop. Very simple. So if you're a GarageBand user, that's what I was looking for there. Let me know. Okay, there's what I was looking for. So, you can mute, unmute, controlling the volume of a track. You can do that all in here. Your metronome, you can loop stuff. GarageBand's going to come with a ton of different, you got strings, bass, guitar, world instruments, a drummer that's going to play beats for you, external stuff that you can plug in. Comes with a nice sound library, keyboards, drums, guitar amp simulator. So in GarageBand, you're going to get a ton of functionality right on your phone. And but I just wanted to show you the correlation between a much more advanced DAW like PreSonus Studio One and what we can do on our phones. You can record multi-tracks, export them as MP3s, but it still comes down to the same principles: arming your track, selecting the right type of track, having a microphone or a software instrument ready to go. So let me just do a final recap for what we learned today. In session 1, we talked about step 1, building your home studio, selecting the room and doing some just minor room treatment, whether that's getting some foam. Like I said, I go to the foamfactory.com to get on my foam because it's really cheap. And it's because it's really cheap, and it's the same damn foam you're going to get at any music retailer for 10 times the price, which is crazy. So it's getting some foam, treating the corners, making sure that behind your, I'm going to pull up what happened? There's me. It's making sure that we've put treatment behind our speaker position, making sure our speakers are at least a foot off the wall, decoupling our monitor speakers from the surface that they're sitting on. We talked about getting the right computer or laptop, making sure that it's got the right processing speed, and making sure you have enough RAM to run all the different programs that you have. We talked about the different types of microphones, the different types of cables for plugging in all of our fun toys. We talked about MIDI controllers and the different types of MIDI controllers that we can use. And just a basic introduction to what the software looks like, and all important all these things that are going to get you started, the proper cabling. And that's, again, it's when we're getting started, it is the little things like making sure you got some foam up in your room so it sounds decent, and those are the things that are going to make a difference as we get into some more of the advanced techniques. So definitely stay tuned for our, keep an eye on our YouTube channel today. Our creative director and the co-founder of Warrior Beat, Ben Lehman, is going to be doing his Introduction to Digital Photography class. And Ben is just a master photographer. So again, that's going to be a free class that we have on our YouTube channel. And for next Saturday, we're going to actually start getting into talking about the different ways of mixing. We'll actually record some tracks. We'll record an audio track, another MIDI track, and I'm going to talk about using EQ, compression, all the different types of ways that we manipulate the audio and the data once we've recorded it, and that's where things, we really start to see how we use the recording studio as a musical instrument. So I'm really excited. We'll talk about different types of plugins, and we'll make sure that we're getting our mixes sounding great. So I really thank everyone for watching. Again, this is going to live on our YouTube channel, so you can play it back. If you have any questions, we got the chat room open. So during these, you can chat with me. My email is trevor@warriorbeat.org. So you can definitely shoot me an email if you got some questions. And if you're a veteran and you're looking to connect, Warrior Beat, it's like we're all about drumming, and that is at our foundation is doing facilitated group drumming for veterans. We have all kinds of online programs right now running, and then as soon as the VA start opening back up and seeing us in person, then we're going to be doing some great drum circles where we can finally get together together and jam. So go to warriorbeat.org to learn more about that. And if you like what you see here and you want to donate a few dollars too, you can go to warriorbeat.org and do that as well. So again, I'm Trevor Meyer, co-founder and CEO of Warrior Beat. Thanks for watching the introduction to home recording, and I will see everybody next Saturday.